Alrighty, let's get this puppy going. Alright, let's lay it. No humping on the leg tonight. Alright, how's sound check? Looking good? Alright, let's go. Let's bring in the pre-roll. And bringing it in. Alrighty, here we go. And let's bring up start music. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Another day has come to a close. Here we are. It's sundown time. Here we are once again, getting ready to have a good time. Talk about some stuff. Everybody get together. Try and love one another. We could use some love in the world today, but alas, there's a lot of dicks out there. I've been called one of them. Here we are.
It was like a dream. Some genius brought a box full of dicks.
Dropped them on the dance floor.
The party froze quick. Girl picked the dick up, held it high in the air.
Yeah.
Heard a pin drop. The party yelled, yeah! Box full of dicks.
Yeah.
Box full of dicks. A genius at the party brought a box full of dicks. Box full of dicks. Box full of dicks.
Hope you guys had a good day. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you? How are you? Here we are at the end of another day, and it's all good. Hope you guys had a fabulous day. Welcome to Sundown. Here at Sundown every evening at 7 p.m. on the West Coast. We intend to have discussions about a variety of subjects from all kinds of different points of views. We do that in an effort to maybe find some clarity in given subjects and basically come to terms with these given subjects. I've switched my screens, so if I look over here and I'm not supposed to be looking over there, I'm probably supposed to be looking over here. Welcome. You guys hopefully had a very great day. Mine was okay. We're not really having a sundown today because the sun in Los Angeles, like much of the West Coast, never came out. It was overcast, it was smoggy, there was ash falling. It kind of felt like winter, and it was snowing. This evening on Sundown, we're discussing the 14th Amendment, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution. The reason I wanted to talk about this evening, welcome everyone, is because I wanted to get you guys' opinion and have a conversation about whether our state, local, Congress people, senators, people in the House, whether they have violated the 14th Amendment, Section 2 of the Constitution by supporting unrest in our country. Let's jump right on into stuff. The call-in line will be open, and we're glad you guys are here and joining us. We'll open up the call line in a little bit so that we can get your opinions on this given subject. Representatives, 14th Amendment, Section 2 of the Constitution reads, representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state, excluding Indians not taxed. Well, the Indians are included now. But when the right to vote at any election for the choice of electors for President and Vice President of the United States, representatives in Congress, the executive and judicial officers of a state, or the members of the legislature thereof, meaning anyone in the legislature or in local government. They are defined basically to any of the male inhabitants of each state. This was written back before women allowed to vote. Women are included with the Indians now. Being 21 years of age and citizens of the United States, or in any way abridged, except for, and this is the part we're going to be discussing this evening, except for participation in rebellion except for participation in rebellion or other crimes. The basis of representation therein shall be reduced in the proportion which the number of such male, females, and yes, Indians, citizens shall bear to the whole number of male, female, and Indians citizens 21 years of age in each state. So basically what it's saying, and what we're going to discuss this evening, is this. How's it going, Douglas? How are you, brother? Man, it's been a long time you haven't popped into my room. Welcome. We're having an obscure conversation here at Sundown tonight, Douglas. And you're more than welcome to call in when we throw the call-in lineup. We'd love to hear your opinion. Let's have a little flashback. And we're going to go back in time a little bit for a better understanding. Democratic leaders have encouraged political violence. And there's my attorney calling. Can't talk right now, bro. Democratic leaders have encouraged political violence, beginning with Barack Obama. Well, looking at the state of our political discourse, it is hard to pin down where exactly the rancorous division started. Well, words are violence. Words are violence. By rioting, looting, and arson are not. Words are violence, but rioting, looting, and arson are not violence. Hectoring, menacing, and crowding supporters of President Trump is shrugged off. Pardon me. But insults to the media are a threat to democracy. If this sounds insane, well, my friends, it's because it is kind of insane. Indeed, in basically my short lifetime, I'm going to call it short because, hey, I want to feel like I'm still young. Indeed, in my lifetime, since Ronald Reagan, who was my president when I was in the military, the media has been critical of Republicans. However, through the Clinton era and through the basic aftermath of September 11th, 2001, which the anniversary is tomorrow, it seemed we were able to come together across the aisles. It seemed that we could govern and we could meet in the middle and get things done. Whether it was to pass legislation or agreeing to defend America's interest, bipartisan agreement was possible. By the 108th Congress, 2003 to 2005, it was nearly impossible, and it stayed that way. Well, shortly after 2005, criticism of George W. Bush, the dickhead, and his administration had reached a fevered pitch. Bush lied, and people died, became a mantra on the left. It discounted the bipartisan support for the Iraqi war and blamed the president personally for the failure to find large stockpiles of weapons of mass destruction, while Judith Miller outlined the intelligence failures that were the root of this problem in her book, The Story. But the narrative was and is something else altogether. Well, it would be difficult to convince me in the 2008 election was a turning point in our political discourse. Well, during the 2008 election, candidate Barack Obama said the following during a Nevada campaign stop. In Elko, Nevada, Obama tried to anticipate his critics and called on the crowd of about 1,500 to sharpen their elbows too. Kind of sounds like a jiu-jitsu thing to me. Sharpen your elbows. Bring down the fury. Quote, I need you to go out and to talk to your friends, to talk to your neighbors. I want you to talk to them whether they are independent or whether they are Republican. I want you to argue with them and get in their face, he said. End quote. Get in their face. Well, that comment came after Obama referred to his grandmother as a typical white person who had fears about black men. Then he criticized his political opponents as, quote, bitter clingers, unquote. In 2009, the Department of Homeland Security put out a baseless memo regarding threats from, quote, right-wing extremists. to be characterized as such, you simply needed to be organizing against abortion or immigration or in support of federalism. So the Republicans have always kind of been more moderate in theory, but now they are casting them as right-winged. If you are against abortion or administration or in support of federalism, you are now extreme right-wing. Well, in 2010, Obama refined this characterization by calling the Tea Party activists the teabag anti-government people. I don't know if you guys know much about that era and what was going on in 2010 with the Tea Party. I watched a very interesting documentary on this subject. I think you can find it on Netflix, The Tea Party or something of that nature. Very much worth watching. It had a lot to do, and mainly what it had to do with was the different, call them right-leaning political organizations that were trying to file with the IRS for tax-exempt status. I believe it's Section 5A or something like that. Basically, it's normally a pretty straightforward thing. They approve you. Well, the IRS went on a 2-year rampage against, I think, about 130 different Tea Party, right-wing organizations to basically stall for the election. And through a very interesting set of circumstances, they had to sue the IRS, and they won against the IRS. And the IRS was forced to admit that they had went out of their way to harass these people and these organizations and refused to give them their designation as a way to politically favor or disrupt what was going on. So Obama categorized them as, by calling them the Tea Party activists, the teabag anti-government people. Very interesting documentary I highly suggest watching if you really want to understand the power of government and the IRS and how they went after these groups. His attorney, General Eric Holder, called America, this is Obama's attorney, Eric Holder, called America a nation of cowards on race discussions. Well, by 2012, Obama said he would have been seen as a moderate Republican if it was in the 1980s after winning re-election. He said this in order to contrast himself with the Republican House, led by notorious squash John Boehner. Can you imagine being a politician and having the last name Boehner? I'm just going to address this because y'all know what it was like in junior high. Can you imagine meeting that guy? Hey, hello, Mr. Boehner. Pleasure to meet you. His friends would be like, hey, here comes Big John Boehner. Anyway, the goal was to cast the moderate Republican as far right, the Republican Party. Well, the next 4 years were absolutely divisive. It seemed that the Democrats were confident they had some national mandate for their idea, and they were shocked when Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump. Now, the reason I'm talking about this and going into it is this. It's basically setting the stage for the tempo and the feeling of the Democratic Party and how things have switched from a bipartisan government whose intent was to fundamentally deal with the party, but also to get legislation passed for America. We are no longer in that kind of government. We have swung, as you know, to one side or the other. There is no middle ground, and there is no government that is lobbying for the people and trying to pass laws. Well, by then, Hillary Clinton had already called Trump supporters a, quote, basket of deplorables. Now, the Democrats, and I'm not making the Democrats bad or the Republicans right. I'm just stating what went on. As you know, you were there. Well, to come out and call Middle America the breadbasket of the country, the hardworking people, the average middle-class people, the uncollege graduates, the laborers of the country, to call them a basket of deplorables is pretty much dividing the country on the lines of the college-educated, the left, or the average Joe, average working citizen, the average immigrant, a basket of deplorables. And the media further casts them as uneducated, backwards, and racist. And that's where we stand. Well, for almost 3 months, for 80 days, Portland has been under siege from Antifa and other extremists, as you know. These troops of the left terrorize the downtown area every single night. With their paramilitary precision, as organized anarchists, they deploy a wide array of less than lethal weapons to wound police, ranging from bats and bricks to laser shots in the eyes of officers to permanently damaging their sight. All of this is to further their goal to overturn our society and radically transform the country. Now, if you remember back to the 14th Amendment, Section 2, it talks about the ability to vote, but not those people who have incited rebellion or other crimes. Let's pull up real quickly what rebellion is defined as. We're going to go over to camera 3 here. That is not camera 3. Ah, there she is. Okay. Rebellion. The definition of rebellion is a resistance against something particular, is a resistance against something, particularly the government authority or other controlling forces. An example of a rebellion is a refusal by a large group of people to follow the law. Well, if we go down further and see what Wikipedia has to say about rebellion, what is a rebellion against the government? Rebellion or uprising or insurrection is a refusal to obey or order. It refers to the open resistance against the orders of a established authority. In political terms, rebellion and revolt are often distinguished by their different aims. Well, if the news media cared to tell the public the truth, it would have been a top story on nightly broadcast for weeks. The Antifa rioters even tried to break into and burn down a federal courthouse in the city, as you so well know. Well, the campaign of intimidation and destruction is plainly domestic terrorism. If we refer back to the 14th Amendment, it talks about the right to vote, but not those who are actively in rebellion or criminal. But the one reason that the siege on Portland has become a major news story is because the administration is trying to restore law and order to the belligerent city, and Democrats hysterically oppose any such action. I'm not saying Democrats are bad, right or wrong or different. That's just what they're doing. President Trump had rightly sent in federal reinforcements to Portland, while many Democrats have circled the wagons on behalf of anarchism. Speaker Nancy Pelosi referred to federal agents deployed into Portland as stormtroopers. Other members of her parties have spoken of federal law enforcement officers as some sort of invading army, unwelcome in urban centers. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio, deep into his campaign to utterly ruin that city, declared that he would take Trump to court if any federal officers were deployed to address the surging violence there. This reaction is stunningly reckless and cynical, even for Democrats, in an important election year, but it is not in the least surprising as the wave of uprising against the police have quickly become a political liability, but started as the resurrection of the Black Lives Matter movement has since morphed into a general mobilization of activists and Marxists who seek to turn the country into a social justice utopia. They have to focus on Trump at the moment, or else more Americans might start to figure out what lunacy the left is inflicting on Portland, among other places. Now, we can argue this is a right agenda. We can argue that, it's the right that says it and sees it this way. They are just people exercising their constitutional right to protest. Well, if you look at the Constitution and you understand and you read it, what it says under the right to protest is you have to file for a permit to protest, and it is in specific places and in specific times. I wonder how many of the people that had these protests had actually filed for a permit. And if they did not file for a permit, are they constitutionally considered illegal, and who is to bear the responsibility of that? Is it not the local police and the local government and the local individuals that have been voted into office to uphold the laws of that given state? One can argue about the politics of the mobs, but they are situated on the liberal side of the aisle. Indeed, they are part of the base of Joe Biden. They are definitely not Trump people. Now that they have moved from outrage over the killing of George Floyd to revolutionary rage, the moral high ground is quickly crumbling under their feet. Why are the anarchists terrorizing Portland? What was the real purpose of the Seattle Autonomous Zone? Or autonomous zone, whatever you call it. Why were Occupy City Hall protesters allowed to fight with police in Manhattan for a month until officers finally cleared out their encampment? Their leaders might offer answers to these questions, but none of them are sensible or serious people who are working for the best for this country. Defunding the police has become the primary rallying cry of these rioters. And we have already seen the effects of this insane idea. Without political support, the police hold back from the most proactive approaches to stop violent crime. That means more shootings and more deaths occurring in largely minority neighborhoods. The administration is right to step in and send federal officers to defend the lives and properties of Americans. It is the mandate of the president. They have been left by Democratic mayors and governors to fend for themselves. Police no-go zones. Trump is and was acting fully within his authority to remedy their basic situation of duty and use resources placed at his disposal. Federal law enforcement agencies are already operating in Portland and every major city in the country. Many local police officers work side by side with their federal counterparts every day to handle crimes ranging from human trafficking to firearm sales and even terrorism. So my question is, yes, my dog wants to hump my leg. My question is this. Let's open up the call-in lines and let's see what you guys think in regards to... Oh, I changed everything around. That's not what we want. So let's open up the call-in lines. And that's not working. There it is. Let's open up the call-in lines. It's 818-579-4651. Give me a call. 818-579-4651. Well, the top aides for Oregon House Speaker among dozens arrested in Portland. Pelosi, climate change will be an early part of Democrats' 2021 agenda. That leaders in Portland and other cities have chosen to sideline or stand down local police officers in order to pander to their enraged base has no bearing on the legality of federal officers doing their job. That the entire focus of Democrats is on trashing Trump across the campaign trail. I'm not defending Trump, I'm stating what it is. Instead of working with the sorely needed federal law enforcement assets, should speak volumes to Americans about their priorities. Portland is the most prominent battleground of this battle over federal intervention. Chicago could be next. Then perhaps New York. Democrats have chosen control. Democrats have lost control of cities because they bowed to and aligned themselves with the mob in order to help their party in a critical election year. Well, Trump views this moment as his obligation to protect Americans and restore law and order to a country that still overwhelmingly desires both. Once again, the call-in line is open, 818-579-4651, 818-579-4651. Would love to hear your opinion. Buck Sexton is the host of the Buck Sexton Show on radio and podcasts, and a conservative political commentator. He is a former analyst with the Central Intelligence Agency and at the New York Police Department. Many of those comments that I just gave came from Buck. Oh, the hypocrisy. My question is this. If the local politicians and those voted under oath and the oaths they took to uphold and defend the Constitution, if they allowed these things to happen in their city, in their states, making it highly partisan, allowing the violence which puts these acts into a category of internal terrorism, and you could easily justify in calling it a rebellion against the state and the government. Now, the leaders of Black Lives Matter have stated openly, everyone knows that they are Marxist, and their desire and their intent is to stop the American government, to replace the American government, to defund the police and replace them with their people, to bring about Marxism, socialism, and I would venture to say communism. Well, does that not violate Section 2 of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution? And is it not too far of a reach for the president to say, well, we're going to disenfranchise every human being that we saw on video from voting in the election because the Constitution and Section 2 of the 14th Amendment says we are allowed to do so because you are in open rebellion against the state and government and committing crimes. Well, that's probably not going to go down very good, is it? Would like to know what you guys think. Representative Val Demings, a Florida Democrat, rising up in the Joe Biden Veep stake back in when she was vying for the VP position, attended a massive healing and hope rally where thousands of maskless protesters were jammed in elbow to elbow. She told her Twitter followers that she was there to speak with our community as America grieves. But later in that week, this Democratic Miss Demings changed her tune, perhaps signifying that she's a perfect choice for Mr. Biden back then. Quote, she said, the president's plan to hold mass rallies in Florida and elsewhere as we experience a resurgence in COVID cases is irresponsible and selfish. That's what Miss Demings said. She also further went to say, do as I say, not as I do, is the Democratic mantra. Ms. Demings won't allow or wasn't alone in flip-flopping. Other top Democrats cheered on Black Lives Matter crowds across the United States, with many attending rallies in honor of George Floyd, a black man who died while in custody of the Minneapolis police. But they were incensed that President Trump was planning campaign rallies. Is this not in rebellion against the government? Does this not fall under Section 2 of the 14th Amendment? Well, Bernie Sanders, Senator, Democrat, a socialist from Vermont, wrote basically on Twitter, quote, "Congratulations to all who are out in the streets today peacefully protesting. Together we will end police brutality. Together we will defeat Trump. Together we will fight for a government based on justice and compassion, not greed and lies." Well, later in that week, on a Thursday, like Miss Demings, Mr. Sanders was blasting Mr. Trump and the Republicans' decision to hold its nominating convention in Florida in late August. As we know, that did not happen. Quote, "Trump wants 15,000 delegates cheering him at his GOP convention in Florida," Mr. Sanders said. "No social distancing. Everybody in there just cheering." His rejection of medical advice endangers not only those there, but those who come in contact with him, Sanders said. "Trump's a threat to the health and well-being of the country. He must be defeated." Ms. Demings, too, whined about Mr. Trump's plans to travel to Florida. Unfortunately, Florida is experiencing a new surge in COVID-19 cases. "I urge you to do everything you can to protect yourselves and your neighbors. Wear a mask. Limit gatherings," she wrote. But by all means, come out and protest. The mainstream media, of course, jumped on board. "Extraordinarily dangerous," they said. "Trump rally draws grave concerns from top health officials," said an NBC News headline. For its piece on protest in Brooklyn, well, which never once mentioned the pandemic, NBC wrote this headline, quote, "Rally for Black Trans Lives draws packed crowds to Brooklyn Museum Plaza." Well, radio host Rush Limbaugh, who everybody loves, called out the two-faced Democrats on this. Quote, "So you see, it's okay for BLM, Black Trans Lives Matter, Occupy Wall Street, whatever. It's okay for liberal Democrats to congregate with sardines, like sardines themselves, everywhere, by the tens of thousands. It's so cool. That's fine. Let Trump do a rally, and somehow he's going to be responsible for murder. He's going to be responsible for death, responsible for people getting sick," Limbaugh said. The other politicians have done just the same. New York Andrew Cuomo, governor, Democrat, dickhead, whose disastrous policies killed thousands in his state, also applauded protesters as they smashed through New York City, looting stores and clashing with police, trying to maintain order. He applauded them. "We've rebuilt and made it better," he said. "Manhattan's rejuvenation services as testament to America." Mr. Cuomo said he stands with those defying stay-at-home orders to protest. But weeks before that, as millions across the state were losing their jobs, Cuomo told protesters demanding the state reopen, "You have no right to jeopardize my health, and my children's health, and your children's health." Hypocrites. On the West Coast, Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti threatened in March to turn off utilities for any business that reopened, saying he wanted to punish irresponsible and selfish behavior. It was what he said. He wants to punish. Then he turned around and supported the protests. "I will always protect Angelenos' right to make their voices heard," he said. And Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, who threatened to hit violators who violated the stay-at-home orders with $5,000 fines or 90 days in jail, sang a different song when thousands of protesters rioted in the nation's capital, defacing memorials and monuments and torching a historic church. Quote, "We are grieving hundreds of years of institutional racism," she said. It goes beyond Mr. Trump. New York City officials, frustrated that residents in Brooklyn kept taking their children to a city park, welded the gates shut. The city had repeatedly padlocked the gates to the playground, but residents broke through at least 25 times in just a few weeks. It didn't take them long to do so again. Well, Mr. Como also took aim at anyone who doesn't stay locked down, possibly forever. Lots of violations of social distancing, parties in the streets, restaurants and bars ignoring laws. He wrote on Twitter, "Bars or restaurants who violate the law can lose their liquor license." How you doing, Lazarus, my friend? I hope you're well. Good to see you. So does this violate Article 2 of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution? Does this not constitute rebellion against the state and the government? To encourage citizens to violate a nationwide pandemic state of emergency, to go out, to assemble peaceably or not, is in violation of the orders and the request to stay the fuck home. The way I look at the Constitution, the 14th Amendment, Article 2, is it says you are not allowed to vote if you are in open rebellion against the state or the government. So thick is the hypocrisy that you can cut it with a knife. Democrats applaud the race riots and the looting, anything to hurt Mr. Trump for re-election chances. But for people who are being crushed under the draconian lockdown measure enacted by state and city governments, they have no patience. They have no understanding. Oh, the hypocrisy. The hypocrisy. Let's open up the call-in line. Give me a buzz, 818-579-4651. Tell me what you think about it. I'd love to hear from you, Lazarus or Douglas. Give me a call, 818-579-4651. No, I'm not trying to slant this that the Republicans are great and the Democrats are not. I'm just putting it out there the way it is, the way it happened on the news, and the way that it smells. If it smells like a fart, it's probably constitutional powers and issues during a quarantine situation. Let's talk about that real quick. The growing concerns about the coronavirus in the United States pardon me, could lead to government officials considering isolation and quarantine as possible measures to contain the virus. We're on the downside now. If there is a resurgence, we may run into it. So what does this mean in constitutional terms? So far, people exposed to the COVID-19 virus have agreed to self-quarantine or voluntarily remain in isolation in consultation with medical authorities. Well, in Santa Clara, California, and San Francisco, officials have banned large gatherings. In most of the country, New Rochelle, New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo has established a containment area, while Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf closed down public schools in Montgomery County and the Philadelphia suburbs, as most of the country did as well. But what happened if the federal government or a state government needs to get directly involved in a situation where large population groups need to be isolated? Or what rights do individuals retain in border entry situations? You see, I firmly believe, my friends, that they're going to bring a second round of COVID-19 infection rates back up to the forefront as we get closer to the election in November. It makes political sense. They don't want, I would think, if I was them, I wouldn't want people going back to work and the economy rebounding and unemployment rates going down. This doesn't look good for their cause. So I feel we're going into a second round of lockdowns probably toward the end of this month. Well, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, state governments and not the federal government have most of the power to place people in isolation or quarantine under certain circumstances. But in some cases, federal and state officials have overlapping roles. It gets a little The difference between an isolation and quarantine situation is important. Isolation separates people known to be ill from those people who are not sick, says the CDC. Quarantine separates and also restricts the movement of people exposed to a contagious disease, but not yet ill, to wait and see if they become sick. Well, in 2014, the Congressional Research Service wrote about quarantines and the federal Constitution when there were concerns about the Ebola virus that was going on there. In general, the Research Service said, the power to take quarantine measures is reserved to the states under the 10th Amendment. Well, in 1824, Supreme Court Justice John Marshall's opinion in Gibson versus Ogden drew a very clear line between the federal government and the state governments when it came to regulating activities within and between states. Marshall's reasoning set the precedent that police powers are reserved to states for activities within their borders, with some exceptions. Those police powers include the ability to impose isolation and quarantine conditions. Marshall further wrote that quarantine laws form a portion of that immense mass of legislation which embraces everything within the territory of a state, not surrendered to the general government. The Research Service also noted that one trend, and basically common today among the states, is the antiquity of their quarantine laws, with many statutes being 40 and even 100 years old. So to be sure, the federal government has important quarantine powers under Section 361 of the Public Health Service Act. The U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services has the power to take measures to contain communicable diseases from foreign countries into the United States and between states. The CDC acts on behalf of the Secretary in these matters. Then there's also the Supremacy Clause. We've talked about the Supremacy Clause and how that's applicable. Go Chiefs, Bob. Oh, you Chiefs. Raiders, they just move around, Bob and Laz. They just move around. Man, don't you guys just miss the days when we could go to Yankee Doodles on Sundays and drink our beers and talk shit, and Laz would get drunk as a motherfucker and be yelling at everybody. Man, I miss those days. I digressed. Well, federal public health and welfare statutes also give the federal government authority to isolate and quarantine persons with certain diseases. You got to understand, under federal law, the federal law trumps state law. Based on an executive order issued by President George W. Bush in 2003, that fuckwad, the federal government also has a seldom used power to impose large-scale quarantines. For example, the federal government issued isolation and quarantine orders during the Spanish influenza pandemic in 1918 and 1919. But under the Constitution, individuals have the rights in quarantine and isolation conditions under the 5th and the 14th Amendments, rights of due process and equal protection. Public health regulations used to impose such conditions can't be arbitrarily oppressed and basically unreasonable. My question to you guys this evening is this. Has our local government officials violated their oaths to uphold the Constitution under Article 14, or under 14 Article 2 of the Constitution, in as much as they are inciting and encouraging rebellion against the government and the state and law enforcement. They are not stopping it. Now, I would think in legal terms it kind of, oh my goodness, I've been talking and not knowing the numbers up there. You guys are like, this motherfucker is clueless. In legal terms, I think it could easily be argued. And the point I'm making with the conversation and the question is this. If that is the case under Amendment 14, Article 2 of the Constitution, the federal government can say to any and everybody in power in California, New York, and Chicago, the three main hubs, that you are in violation of your oath of office, and you are hereby terminated, and your service is no longer rendered or needed to the United States. You and anybody who is seen on camera inciting violence or protesting without a permit. We have the right to protest, but the Constitution and the amendments to the Constitution states that you must get a fucking permit in order to do so. And the permit has places where you can go, where you can't go. You have to specify the intent of the protest and what you're going to be doing, where you can go, and the hours that you are allowed to do so. If those permits were not obtained, every single protester can be disavowed and not allowed to vote in the local primaries and for president and for vice president. Any congressional seat, Republican or Democrat. That's my take on the Constitution. There are precedents where courts have ruled that basically states or local governments didn't meet a burden of proof to justify a quarantine. For example, in 1900, courts ruled against the city of San Francisco when it tried to inoculate and quarantine Chinese residents against the bubonic plague, when the courts had doubts that the plague conditions ever really existed. This game has been going on for a long time, and there also are precedents that authorities should provide confined people with an explanation about why they are confined and noting that they have a right to counsel and other constitutional provisions. Well, a current example of a federal quarantine order related to COVID-19 virus on the CDC website outlines the following. Many of these principles for people arriving in the United States and reasonably suspected by the CDC of exposure to or infection with the coronavirus. Those quarantines have the right to a medical review and to ask a federal court to review their federal quarantine, including any rights to habeas review. Somebody give me a call, 818-579-4651. That's the number right there. Give me a call, 818-579-4651. Also, the federal government does have an updated plan to cope with a national influenza pandemic, first developed in 2005 and last updated in 2017. Now, there's accusations that Trump did away with a lot of that, but basically the plans are there and were there. The National Pandemic Influenza plans deal with isolation and quarantine options if needed. Of course, one final question is, how can the government enforce isolation and quarantine conditions? Well, the Wall Street Journal reported that people in Missouri and New Hampshire recently violated self-quarantine orders to attend events. Enforcing those orders is problematic at best, said one expert. Quote, it really is pretty much an honor system, end quote, said Polly Price, a professor of law and global health at Emory University. Public health people themselves can't arrest someone or force them to stay somewhere and then try to use that as an absolute last resort. Sarah Connor, you terminated fucker. says Bob. Government agencies do have the power to take action if needed. For example, in Pennsylvania, violators of this Communicable and Non-Communicable Disease Code, Chapter 27 of Health and Safety Act 28, may face fines and imprisonment in county jail. Ooh! There are laws that are not being used. The National Conference of State Legislatures maintains a comprehensive list of state quarantine and isolation statutes, including penalties. Likewise, violations of federal quarantine orders can result in fines and imprisonment under Title 42 of the U.S. Code. So, my question is this, my friends. Do you think as the Constitution, Amendment 14, Article 2 states that they are in violation of the Constitution in supporting and not shutting down these marches and these riots and all the looting and so on and so forth, allowing them to overtake Chaz, disallowing the government or raising a stink about the government trying to send in troops to handle their jobs, their oath to protect the citizens of their state as defined by the Constitution. I read it as they are in violation of that article. Give me a call 818-579-4651. Give me your point of view. I'm tired of talking. My voice is like... So, Mr. Lazarus, if you're still there, and Mr. Bob, how you guys doing? Somebody give me a call, talk some shit, tell me all about it. How long? I changed my screens from over here to over there, so I keep looking over here to find this screen, and now it's dead in front of me. So I'm trying to figure out, my friends, if, you know what, I'm going to change over to this screen if I can. Real quick, I'm going to jump on here, and I'm going to, give me 1 second, who's ever calling in. Hey, this is Sundown. Who's this? Tony Epperson. Hold on 1 second. I just hooked the microphone up. Hang on, I got to turn it on. Are you there, Tony?
Yes, sir.
Can you guys hear Tony? Talk for me, Tony.
I'm here. I'm speaking.
Okay, fabulous.
Trying to get to where I can watch and hear at the same time.
I just
looks like I've made that mark.
I just hooked up a microphone to the speaker, to the phone, so I don't have to sit here and hold it. How's your day going? Your house survived, Tony. Cheer up, fucker. Oh, I'm not even on the screen. Shit, let me get over here. Hi. I'm not going over there. I'm going over here. How's your day going, Tony? Talk to me. Tell me about your day.
Well, everything's still, it's scary and super smoky up here, and we're just, we're kind of socked in, but we're very fortunate in that all the fires seem to be going away from us. The town of Guinea is being evacuated, and what's that?
I didn't say anything.
Oh, we're on a delay. We're on a delay, huh? So I can't watch you. I can't watch you and watch you.
You can. Yeah, there is a delay.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I just need to know that. That's all I need to know.
So let me ask you this, sir.
Yes, sir.
What do you think of the concept of the 14th Amendment, Article 2, stating that those who are in rebellion or against the state or the government are not allowed to vote for any of...
I'm of the thought of, I really understand that there is a lot of really precarious issues right now, but I think that say for instance, if you go out and you don't wear a mask, there's no point in exacerbating an issue that is relevant on some level, whether somebody made it for us and brought it here, or whether, for whatever reason, there is a real aspect to it. I'm wearing a mask when I go out. I'm not going to bitch about it. That's me. I don't want to see social unrest. I don't want to see the military come in and try to mop up some kind of bloody mess that's occurred because the division was so distinct that it caused a calamitous event. I don't want that. I truly don't want that.
Well, I don't really think any of us do. I believe that everybody wants everything to be cool. Everybody wants everything to go back to normal. The point I'm making with tonight's discussion, come here, poo-poo, is this. There have been, from my legal mind's point of view, violations of our constitutional rights and the 14th Amendment, Article 2.
Oh, most assuredly.
And within that, the president does have the legal right to tell anybody who participated in those things that they are in violation of the Constitution, remove them from office, and stop them from voting. That includes Gavin Newsom. That includes Nancy Pelosi, Bug-Eyed Shifty Shift. I wonder if that's something he's going to pull out right before we go into the election.
I don't know if there's any way you could make the volume increase, but I can barely hear you. I've turned everything off, and I'm doing my very best.
My volume?
I can barely hear you at this time.
My volume is maxed out. I'm in the red already.
Yeah, so is mine. That's odd.
Ah, it must be Bill Gates fucking with us.
Yeah.
Wow. Sorry that you can barely hear. So let me ask you this.
Can you hear me okay?
Oh, I can hear you fabulously. Oh,
okay, wonderful.
The reason you're having a hard time is you're listening through the phone. I'm talking into the microphone.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
You know what? Hold on one second.
And if I watch the show, I'm on a 10-second delay, so we can't do that either.
Yeah, I'm going to bring the phone closer to me so that you can hear.
Yeah, that's way better. That's way better. Thank you.
Yeah. So the president has the ability to do these things, and if they are done, I would think the Democrats are going to call foul and say that he is being a dictator, as is his right, as it was the right for his wife to rip out all the flowers and take the rose garden back to its original state.
Well, here's my take on it. If you're ready for a little a little monologue, I guess. Sorry to monopolize the conversation. It's very difficult for me to not have any visual cues on when to stop speaking. So
now, before you launch into that, our viewer, before you launch into that, our viewer Bob says it's not Gates. Trump is to blame for everything, and this is kind of the problem that we deal with, Bob. And hold on to your thought, my friend, because I just want to address this. I don't like Donald Trump. I've stated from day one, Bob, that Donald Trump is a fucking dickhead. I understand his intent and what he's trying to do. I don't like him. And to say that everything is Trump is to blame for everything is beyond idiocy. It's just fucking stupid, Bob. That's like saying that Trump is responsible for cancer. He's responsible for COVID-19. He's responsible for the riots. He's responsible for everything because he's president and he has orange fucking hair. Okay, my friend, jump into your monologue.
Okay, he is the president. He has orange hair and a slight orange hue to his skin. He is, however, in my opinion, doing a fabulous job, with the exception of his dialogue. It's horrible to listen to him speak and know that we're listening to the President of the United States. Now,
yeah, but let me jump in on that. We're not listening to the president. We're listening to Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is not a politician. Donald Trump is a businessman. He's a New Yorker, and he talks like a businessman, not like a president.
That is correct.
That's the problem a lot of people have. They want him to be Obama, and he's not.
I believe, Obama was slick. Boy, wasn't he? Slicker now, shit on a doorknob, boy, I tell you what.
Him and Clinton.
Regret vote.
Them Democrats got that shit. They got that slick shit down.
Yes, sir. I believe that what's going on in California governance-wise is atrocious. I believe that it is tantamount to treason. I believe that Gavin Newsom and Nancy Pelosi and all of those that came before her and their little club are actually traitors, and I believe that there is enough evidence to try them in some court or in, I don't know, Supreme Court. I'm not really familiar with the process enough to say which court, but they're traitors.
I would venture to. I would venture
Gavin
to
Newsom's
think.
a traitor.
I would venture.
And I'm sorry?
I would venture to think that the president could enact Article 14, Line 2, and state that they are in violation of their oath to uphold our Constitution by doing what they did, thus removing them from office and their ability
Absolutely.
and their
Absolutely.
and all of California's ability to vote. If anybody who was out there protesting and rioting, if it was not under a permit, they are in violation of that constitutional right. You lose your right to vote if you are in rebellion against the government or state, or allowed it, or perpetrated it, or assisted it, so on and so forth.
That certainly is something that I've not. I mean, I'm sure that I've heard at some point that exists, but I mean this is an all-out war, man. I mean, this is like, and it's right around the corner from being blood in the streets, in my mind. In fact, actually, it already is blood in the streets. It's just there are people that are trying to maintain decorum, but there are actions that are just I thought Governor Brown was bad. What Governor Newsom is doing is treacherous. The way that the bills are worded, and the critical aspect of the bill is a single line on page 374, where it changes the whole. They're not representing things as they are. They're representing things in a total deception for a specific goal, and it's treason. It is nothing more, nothing less. It's treason, and they are traitors. And for anybody to, and I know that there's a whole group of individuals on the left, and I hate to say it because I live with a liberal. I have friends that are liberals. I respect anybody's opinion and anybody's view, but there's a reality here that there is brainwashing, and there are things afoot that are people don't realize the power of.
You know, the funny thing, my friend, is I was more liberal leaning in my politics until Trump came in and the Democrats started doing what they've been doing, and then I found myself being more centrist and more toward the right, and I'm like, I'm kind of for the planet and for health and for the environment and for everyone being kumbaya.
You and I as well, sir. You and I as well. I voted for Barack Obama in 2008.
That's the only president I have ever voted for.
Democrat.
I voted for one president in my life, Barack Obama, twice.
Well, that's the same here. I actually voted for Donald Trump this last time around, but I don't regret that. And I think that he's holding everything together in a way that no one else could. He's done some wonderful things, and while I don't feel that he is a panacea for every problem, I do believe that he has rights, and that he has every right in the world to exercise convicting certain people in government and seeing the process that has been put into place for these very reasons. See that it's carried out. Now, I know that this is going to draw a lot of fire, and I know that I'm going to be demonized and finger pointed at, and I don't want people acting out on either side of the aisle. I've seen some things today in a feed today that was, hey man, it's not a big deal. Wear the fucking mask. It's not that big of a fucking deal. I don't want to be. Yes, sir.
I agree with the whole mask thing to a certain point. My point for the conversation in the show this evening is this. If our local politicians in different states, New York, Chicago, LA, Miami, the main hubs, have violated our constitutional rights under the 14th Amendment, second article, and have basically supported insurrection against the state and the government, they can be squashed from voting for the president. And I think a good constitutional attorney would be able to litigate that anybody who attended or participated in any of these riots or what are they called? Protests.
Melees,
Yes,
whatever you
melees.
want to,
If they were not sanctioned,
coup d'etat, whatever you would like to call them, they're all of those things.
if they were not permitted as per the Constitution and the law, anyone who participated in them is now in violation of that amendment and that article, and therefore they do not get to vote.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what laws are for. Laws. That's what the laws are there for. I mean, that's not unreal. That's not unreasonable. It is occurring, and the law is in place, and it should be exercised. And it doesn't make Donald Trump an evil person. It makes him a person who is looking at things realistically and using the power of his office to take action appropriately. That's just how I see it. I mean, I know I'm going to get like 9 miles of shit for this. I'm very sure of it.
You know what?
This is how I feel about this issue.
It doesn't matter. I was having a conversation today with a friend of mine that swung by, and it's like in Hollywood. Everything is so polarized. It's no longer about. It's no longer about jobs. It's no longer about pissing people off. What's at stake is the Republic of America. What's at stake is the future of our country, hence the future of the world, because if America falls, the rest of the world falls with it. The world is dependent upon our economy. The world is dependent upon our money. The world is dependent upon our democracy as a beacon of light for other countries. And that's what's at stake. So from the point of view of my discussion with him today is it's not about don't get into politics, don't speak your mind, don't offend anybody. It's time for everybody to stand up and say, this is the truth, this is the law, this is what the framers intended. We need to bring our country back in line with what the framers intended.
It's true. It's true. It's true. But then we have to also look at. I mean, this is where it gets muddy in my mind. Is when a lot of these articles were written, things were a lot different. But there are rules and there are laws that are on the books, and as far as voting and having a right to vote and participating in criminal activity, if you're a criminal, if you're a felon, you can't vote anyways. Isn't that correct? Can you vote as a felon?
It depends on the state.
I see. Well, here's another issue to drag into this already swirling bowl of shit. Is I don't trust mail-in ballots. I don't trust electronic voting machines. I don't think any of us should. Because there's obviously shenanigans and people with nefarious agendas afoot, and there's nothing wrong with just basically ensuring that everything stays on the up and up, and us using a tangible, countable system that can't be manipulated as easily and is provable. A paper vote is a paper vote, and it's in a box and it's in a pile, and you can count the pile, and that's where it ends up is where it ends up.
Well, it's ludicrous. We can go protest. We can go to Walmart. We can go to the beach, but we can't stand in line and vote. It's my belief, and others have asserted the same, that the whole mail-in vote thing is really just designed for Nancy Pelosi to become president.
Well,
In as much as if
God forbid that ever happens.
Well,
that
that's
babbling,
if
drunken traitor becomes president of our wonderful country. God forbid that. I mean, that's let's face it. She's not competent. You cannot look at anything she does or says, or for any recent time period, and think that this is a reasonable, rational individual. This is a person that dances on the strings of, I'm not going to say specifically whose power, because I don't know exactly. I hear things, but I don't know how steeped in George Soros's pocket she is.
She's very
don't know.
deep. It's been proven. She's very deep in their pockets. For me, the game with the mail-in voting, that's what it is. Because if there isn't a president declared by, I think it's the 20th, then the Speaker of the House is the one who assumes the presidency until the tabulation is finished.
Well, we need to figure out a way to get in line. I don't give a shit if the line's 25 miles long and everybody has to stand 72 inches apart and go at it
for a week.
For a week, whatever it takes.
Well,
mail-in votes are bullshit. Electronic voting machines are bullshit. They're easily manipulated, and they will be manipulated. And we need to stand in line and vote. That's it. Period. That in my mind is not up for discussion. And let the cards fall where they may, as far as what the people decide. I will respect what the people decide.
I will
not stand idly by and watch traitors just take over. This is where we're at. I don't consider myself an individual that participates in this type of activity, but I have no choice. I'm an American.
You know what?
And I see things happen. I see things happening that are they're beyond the pale, man. I mean,
I agree.
There's no other way to say it.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, my friend. Thank you for calling in and sharing your thoughts on it.
I appreciate that.
All
Thank
right,
you. It's
brother.
very nice
Love
talking
you.
to you, sir.
I'm
Have a nice
glad
evening.
you're having a good time up there and not getting fried.
We're very lucky, and it's smoky as hell outside, but everything's going away from us, and our friends are...
It's all coming down to L.A.
Everybody's safe right now, and we're just hoping for the best. I'm doing my engine building stuff on my coffee table in my house, and we have all the air filtration stuff running full blast, and all the doors are closed, and we're doing the best we can.
we're all glad it worked out for you. We'll talk to you another night, my friend. All right.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Now, my friend Bob in the group says Biden Pelosi 2021. Well, funny thing about that, Bob, is this. If Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, if all of the votes are not tabulated by a specific date, the Constitution mandates that the Speaker of the House assumes the mantle of president. At that time, she is more than able and legally rightful in assigning a vice president that she so desires. How about Pelosi Newsom? Because Nancy Pelosi surely wouldn't be able to put Biden in, and I surely don't think he would accept a vice presidency again. And I surely don't think she would pick Kamala Harris, which would be insane, but she would be able to pick the person that stands next to her a heartbeat away from the throne of the presidency with no discussion, with no American points of view. I'm going to have Sharon Stone is going to be my vice president, or Oprah, or Michelle Obama, or Andrew Cuomo. She can pick anyone. So for me, the game is Not the election. It seems to me that the game is if they can delay everything past the law's mandate that the president has to be decided by this specific date, I believe on the 20th. I'll have to check that. That the Speaker of the House is now the president until it is resolved. And how long could that be tied up in court? And who would be running the government? Not anybody elected by the people. And who would be sitting in the vice president's chair? Whoever she wanted there. And could she not say, I'm putting my nephew, Gavin Newsom, as my VP in this transition, and then immediately, for health reasons, step down, and Gavin Newsom, her nephew, is now President of the United States? Well, I'd like to thank the American people for allowing me to sit in this hallowed seat. I don't have Gavin's hair, but I got his shtick down. So, tonight's discussion was about the 14th Amendment and Article 2 of the 14th Amendment and whether the Trump administration has the ability legally and constitutionally to declare that the leaders of these major cities that allowed these protests and these violence to go on and the overtaking of police stations and the Chad zone and so on and so forth and did not allow the federal government to come in and stop it. Were unwilling to do it themselves. Were found to be financed by people who were financing these what is considered terrorist organizations, Antifa, and Marxist organizations in an attempt to overthrow the state and the government and be insurrection against said authorities. Under the 14th Amendment, Article 2, it says they will not be allowed to vote. And if in fact each and every one of those protests did not have a permit, they are not legal protests under our Constitution and therefore are illegal. And every human that protested could be gone through on video, identified, and not allowed to vote. That's how it looks to me. Does anybody have a point of view of, from a legal point of view, about whether that would be true? I'll leave the call-in line open. It is 818-579-4651. Give me a call and tell me what you think. Let's not try and spin off into other points of politics at that time. Let's stick with Amendment, 14th Amendment, and Article 2 of it. There are many other things that could be argued. I think from my understanding of constitutional law and how the law could be argued, it feels to me like if criminal charges are brought against them, that this could in fact be true. Good evening, this is Sundown. Who's this?
It's Bob.
Bob, my goodness.
Who else would it be?
Raiders! It's all about the Raiders.
Chiefs.
My goodness, Bob, how long has it been since we talked to each other? 10, 12 years?
It has been a while. It's been since, I believe you were doing cart night over at the 50.
Wow. My goodness. We both got old
I've
as
been on the Yankee Doodles, 2 or 3.
we both got old as a motherfucker, didn't we?
Oh, it's been a while, man. I've been out here in this godforsaken state for 21 years.
Wow. So your Chiefs did pretty good last year.
And doing fairly good tonight from what I can see. Houston, we have a problem.
The game is on. Are they wearing those stickers on their helmets?
I didn't pay that much attention to it. I muted it for the pregame bullshit and the circle of unity around the coin toss. I protested. I took a knee.
Huh.
I was driving up to see me, and I just turned down the volume. I was like, nope, not going to listen to it.
Yep, I'm not going to do it. Bob, I mean, we haven't really talked politically. What's your feeling about it all? And I'm not talking about from a Democrat or a Republican point of view, from a Trump point of view, just about all of it as from an American point of view.
Well, to go your main topic tonight, the 14th Amendment and violation of it. I don't know that I would say that anybody who protests the government shouldn't be allowed to vote. That seems like dictatorship.
I don't agree with that at all. But under Article 2 of the 14th Amendment, and under not under Article 2, but under the 14th Amendment, under the right to protest, it is specified that they have to have permits and they have to follow the laws within the protest, and if they don't, the protest is considered illegal, and that puts them under Article 2 of the 14th Amendment. And the outside of the protest with the violence, I believe how I read the law is that if the people in charge of state government and local government in various amounts of states have assisted or are being financed by the people that are financing the violence and the insurrection against state and government, they can be removed from office and not allowed to vote.
Yeah, aside from Portland, whatnot, with the whole shenanigans up there and their little wannabe lawless town, I don't know that I would say, like L.A., whatnot, has been complacent in that.
Well, our mayor down here has basically, he just let it all happen. And he supported it, and he encouraged it, and he made us all stay home and in our houses and shut down businesses, but he encouraged people to go out and protest. The 14th Amendment, and I'm going to skip to the beginning parts, because it talks about Indians and people who are 21. It goes into and it says, but when the right to vote at any election for the choice of electors for President and Vice President of the United States, representatives in Congress, the executive and judicial officers of a state, or the members of the legislature thereon, when it is denied to anyone who's over the age of 21, and citizens of the United States, or in any way abridged, except for participation in rebellion or other crime. Now, except for participation in what the Second Amendment, Article 2 is stating is these people have the right to vote. You cannot take away their right to vote, except for participation in rebellion or other crime. The basis of representation therein shall be reduced to the proportion. So basically, how I read it, if the leaders of, let's say California, if the leaders of California are found to be in rebellion or have committed crimes, then they are removed from the ability to vote. And I don't know how legally it would affect the senators or the two designates that they have under our system to vote in presidents, under our, what's it called? Not the popular vote. My brain's tired. I've been at it for like an hour and a half now.
The Electoral College?
Yeah, the Electoral College. It seems that it can affect the Electoral College per state. That's why I wanted to have the conversation to see what other people think about it, and whether, if this is in fact the case, is that something that the orange he-bitch would pull out of his hat and say, hey, Nancy Pelosi, you violated your oath. Gavin Newsom, all of your states now do not have a voice in the Electoral College. That's some way out there shit.
At the same time, then, he's got a share of voters. He may not have the majority of the voters in the state, but he's also he would be cutting off his nose to spite his face that, all right, if you say everybody in California can't vote because you fucked up, now I'm also limiting my supporters from that state.
Right. Well, I'm not saying everybody in California. What I'm alluding to is if people that are doing rioting, if people that are protesting, and it's found that the protests were illegal, technically, constitutionally, they can be disavowed to vote, which would take out hundreds of thousands of left-wing voters in California. I don't know if it's a stretch in the law, but the precedent could be argued, and that would be enough to throw the election in California into a wham. Now, our votes never really count here because the 270 is already reached by the time we're done. So we're just kind of like, whatever. We just go get a little sticker and masturbate our patriotism. I don't know. I would like to see Trump just bow out and turn it over to Pence and say for the good of the country and come back in 2024 and run again after he has stood off to the side and utilized the art of war like Barack Obama did and sabotage from the outside.
You know, I mean, like you said, you're not a Trump supporter. You don't like the guy. I mean, he is not a polished politician. He shoots from the hip. He speaks his mind. Part of that is why I liked him from the start. He's kind of like me. He speaks his mind, and everybody be damned. If you like me, you like me. If you don't,
exactly. Now, I'm not a Trump supporter, but I support his intention and his agenda. What he's trying to do, 99% of it I support. I just don't. He's not an articulate guy, and he could have pivoted and become presidential if he chose to. I think he does what he does to appeal to his base, and that's the tact he's taking. All the political things that he's doing, I like 99% of what he's doing. Be damned with the people in power and the people that are screwing over America. Maybe these are what we need. This is what we need to get America back on track. We need total chaos.
It's like, I'm from Illinois. When Obama first came up, my sister and my mother voted for him. I didn't like him. I thought he was too polished. My statement from the start when he first started campaigning, he's a snake oil salesman. And 8 years later, it's like, oh, looks like I had him pegged.
You know, I voted for him, and as I said, the only president I've ever voted for. I don't agree with the system. I don't agree with voting. I think it's bullshit, and I don't think the people get to decide who runs a corporation. I think the people that run the corporation decide who runs a corporation. I voted for Barack Obama because, one, he was polished, he was articulate, he was an attorney, and I looked at it and I said, you know what, if anyone can end racism in America, it would be very healthy for us to have an African American president. It would shut a lot of that shit down, and we can move closer toward a unified country racially. And that's why I voted for him. And then he turned out to be a fuckwad who, likes to support Muslims and all of that stuff. I'm sorry, I'm hitting one of my cables.
Well, one of the first things he did, that at least as far as I can remember, it was very early in his terms in office, was that he had that backyard beer meeting between the cop and the other person, that the person of color that he stopped that felt they were slighted, and it was like, from that point on, that was the axe that he drove between the races, and it just got worse from there.
You know, Bob, how hard is it to go from an eloquent, articulate, well-spoken, well-groomed man with a beautiful family, first African-American president, to Donald Trump, a guy who's crass and wants to shake it all up, rip out the foundations of what our government's based on, which is fucking the people, and getting nothing but opposition. It's very hard to go to that. It's going to be interesting.
You look at the likes of everybody that you would name, Pelosi, Schiff, all of them that have been in politics for 50-plus years each, and now all of a sudden in 3 years, coming up on 4 years, Trump's to blame for all of this that he hasn't corrected, that they've been in office for 50-plus and didn't do a fucking thing about it.
I agree wholeheartedly. Nothing but fuckwads. You know, it's what gets me the most, Bob, is a critical thinking adult looks at the emotion of everything. Yeah, I don't like the guy. I don't like what he said about grabbing him by the pussy. I don't like all of that. I don't like the person, but I like the intention. And the average critical thinking person can look at what the media is doing and what the Democrats have attempted to do, and how can they not say from day one when you lost the election, you stated that you are going to impeach him. You have an insurance policy, and everything that you have set out to do has lent itself to those aims. How can not any logical, because most Democrats are pretty logical thinking, educated human beings. How can you not look at that and go, you know what, we're a bunch of fuckwads. We gave this guy a shitty break.
Very true. But I mean, you know, like you said, with the person that he is, whatnot, his beliefs, his statements, I may not like him as a person, but as far as, I mean, the fact that he speaks his mind, the fact that he's not a career politician, he claimed from the start that he was going to come in and drain the swamp and change, like you said, the foundation that we've been living on as long as we've been alive, plus, and all the, you know, same as it ever was bullshit that goes on election in, election out, and nothing ever changes. I mean, you know, you want to talk about the race relations. Hell, it's been that way since the 60s.
Sure.
And now all of a sudden, in 3 years, it's Trump's fault.
Of course. You know what?
You know, I mean, nothing has ever changed, and here he comes in wanting to turn everything upside down and supposedly change the system. That's what I thought was great about him from the start, was that he was a new face, no different than a chief of police. You don't promote from within, because they came up through the ranks. They were groomed by their predecessors.
Good old
boys. No, you hire from somebody outside that is going to be completely different and change the way things operate.
Sure. You know, for me, the lack of logical looking at what's going on in the world and in our country. Everyone in America has been bitching about a government too big and them screwing us since I've been alive. And along comes a guy that says, you know what, I'm going to change that. I'm going to get rid of all of this bullshit that we've all been bitching about forever. We all know governments run amok. Here's one thing I don't understand that he didn't do. I mean, I kind of understand it in the bigger game, but I wished he would have done. I wish he would have enacted what's still on the books that Kennedy had. I think it's 000101, bringing back the silver certificates, taking us off the Fed and back on precious metals. Because that's, I believe, why they killed Kennedy. The main reason. It's why every president who's ever been assassinated was assassinated because of their attempts to put us back on the gold system or precious metals. If you study history and research them all, which I've done extensively, we did an entire show on it.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, it's funny you mentioned Kennedy, because you talk about Trump and his grab him by the pussy statement. But, you know, here you've got Kennedy that was shagging Marilyn Monroe.
Sure.
You've got Clinton that was stooping everybody that he could, including his
Monica.
assistant.
You know, my point of view...
That's why I don't care, you know, your morals, your values are one thing, who you are. But, I mean, you know, hell, you've got cops out there on patrol that cheat on their wives and are drunkards.
Sure.
But as long as they show up to work and enforce the law fairly, I don't give a fuck what they do on their time off.
Exactly. And Trump should have said it's none of your business. Bill Clinton should have said it's none of your business. Yeah, she sucked my dick. Hillary watched. Hillary watched.
I mean, yeah, if I was married to Hillary, I'd probably want somebody else too. But
yes. My friend, I am 35 minutes over my hour, and I can feel my brain is getting very tired. It was a pleasure to speak with you, and I don't know where it's going to go. I can't see a way through it all, but we're going to go for a hell of a ride, my friend. I hope you're packing.
Absolutely. One way or the other, either I think coming over the first week of November, we're either in for a civil war or all of a sudden everything's going to be suddenly unicorns and rainbows and roses.
Kumbaya. It was a pleasure talking with you, my friend. I hope you join us.
Pleasure.
I hope you join us on another evening. We're here Monday through Friday.
Dude, hit me up. We will go grab a beer together as well.
Alrighty, I'm in the Valley, North Hollywood.
I'm here right behind West Hills Hospital. Just came from Tavern 101 in Agoura. So we will get together on a patio somewhere, even before the pandemic ends, and grab a beer together.
Maybe when the Raiders and the Chiefs play. Ha!
Sounds like a plan to me, sir.
It was great
Have a
talking.
great night,
It was great
Frankie.
talking with
Always
you,
a
Bob.
pleasure.
God bless you, buddy. Well, my friends, we've reached the end of another show. I don't know if we accomplished anything, if we talked about anything important. I just wanted to bring up this question and this thought in regards to the 14th Amendment, second Article 2, and those who are in rebellion against the state or the government and their voting rights. It's something to look into. It might be a card that is played as we get closer to November 4th. Thank you guys for spending this time with me on this day, September 10th, 2020. And I hope you guys join me tomorrow night as the sun gets ready to set. I don't know what we'll talk about, but I can guarantee you I will bring my deep radio voice and my little thingy, and we'll talk about it. You guys have a great night. It was a pleasure spending this time with you. Why? Because you are so beautiful to me. Can't you see? Bye-bye now. You're everything